Hi, my name is Victoria Ramlal Singh Hinton. My pronouns are they, she. My current role is Community Relationships Manager for a clinic, and I am a queer mom of three, and I reside in Pittsburgh, PA. I identify as a Black queer West Indian person, and they shape my identity very very intersectionally. I think that being West Indian and being Black specifically has also been a determinant for me. Um, Specifically, like navigating spaces of health, which is why I chose the profession that I'm in with reproductive justice, seeing how Black women, femmes, thems, don't get access to healthcare. Also, growing up in a West Indian household, seeing how they are in a lot of child marriages, specifically like my grandma I've seen growing up, how they have been um, removed a lot of access from where they're from. Also, religion intertwined in that. I think a lot of people have had um, patriarchy, misogyny, so many things intertwine onto why they weren't able to reach their full capacity. So I think that those intersections of my identity empower me to remind myself of the access that my ancestors didn't have and to push forth getting access specifically for those demographics. I think that my own experience with not having access, growing up extremely poor in a very rich neighborhood, specifically in DC, seeing how I was not able to have access to like dental care, not have access to certain things, even though my peers and people around me who grew up very privileged, and I was very privileged to have access to like really great schooling, really great like resources, access to great food, and still I didn't feel like my health was prioritized. I work for a clinic who focuses primarily on adults on Medicare, and I think that this demographic of people are specifically forgotten when it comes to reproductive justice because they are older, because they're seniors, they still have sexual identities, they still have pleasure, they still have rights. And because they're older, they are not taken into account, which a lot of times in nursing homes and in facilities with senior citizens, they have the highest rate of STIs and transmittable infections because one, I think they don't have access to condoms and people don't give them that access. And also the education is not there. They are not aware of like testing. They don't have the testing available to them, or their doctors don't test them for it because they're like, oh, you're 70. Why do I need to test you for an STI? So I think that being in close proximity to these demographics, I want to amplify their voices and remind them that like at all stages of life, we are sexual beings and people who have rights. I think that all of those things intertwine. Specifically, the area that I service is a Black area, and we amplify that we want them to have access to healthy testing, want them to have access to healthy care. A lot of the people who live in our community, they have limited mobility, so that they take the bus. We pick them up in our van, and it's not through access, it's through us directly because we want to ensure that they're getting the access and the availability to come into our clinic to get testing, to get their blood work, to have all those things in-house to ensure that they're getting the proper care that they need. Also, I think that the demographic of just being 65 and up, there's a lot of shame that comes with certain things, like talking about sex, talking about your identity. Some of our people in our center are queer, and I think that they don't even realize what that means. They'll just say my friend, or their language around like queerness or their sexuality is very limited. And I think that comes from a place of also being in a space of during their time, they didn't have that language, they didn't have that acceptance that we do now. Reproductive justice to me means that everyone has access to do and be who they would like to be, especially in a family dynamic. I think that for me, one of the biggest things of being someone who is not officially like husband, wife, having a different dynamic in a family dynamic, I think is something that is important to me in being able to thrive in that family dynamic. I think that also bodily autonomy is important to me, specifically for people who have children. I think that knowing that we're individuals and we have individual things and rights, I think that's super important. I think that it's important for society to realize the importance of reproductive justice, because I think that it goes hand in hand with so many other intersections like Black justice, Black liberation, socioeconomics, and things like that. I think that once we remove rights from people and we don't consider them as human or important, or we start policing them, it becomes very, very, I'm going to start that over. I think it's important for society to look beyond the scope of reproductive health as just healthcare. I think that it's important to realize that when we have intersections like Black liberation, capitalism, and so many things intertwined, that it's a bigger scope of just like someone needing an abortion. It's taking people's rights away in totality, and not just a healthcare thing. It's a worldwide thing. And so many different entities and systemic things need to be in place so that people can thrive. I think that one of the biggest things is access to healthcare. I think also abolition in general, and I think that anti-capitalism for sure. I think that one of the biggest things that for me and my specific family is my ability to have to survive and sustain. I feel like I'm denying myself the access that I deserve. For instance, like I won't have the ability to go to certain doctor's appointments, or I don't prioritize my own health and I work in a healthcare facility. I envision a world where people can have families, not have families, can get the procedures that they would like. For instance, like people who are sure that they do not want children, they don't want to have anything pertaining to children, can get hysterectomies. People who are of trans experience, they can have access to the medicine that they need, the life that they need without scrutiny, without being murdered. I think that people in general are going to be able to be individuals and live the life that they would want to live without harm, with the access to the things that they need, and thriving. I think one of the biggest change that would need to happen initially is making sure that people have the rights to do that. Like, for instance, not taking away abortions, not taking away access to tea and estrogen and things that people need to live into their identity, not policing them, not criticizing them, making people aware that these things are important, getting the education that we need for people who don't understand what's going on. I think that also having funding behind that so that people who don't have the access to money to pay for these surgeries, they have the ability to do that. It's covered through their insurance. One of the biggest barriers that I think hinders the Black women, LGBTQ, and marginalized people in reproductive justice is white supremacy. I think that even in organizations and places where they do great things for reproductive justice health, they still prioritize white women, white voices, white people in power that inherently project that white supremacy onto the people they're trying to service, onto the Black workers and people of color that are in their orgs, and they're experiencing the same thing that they want in their community to change. I'm in a Black and queer and trans parent group, and I think one of the biggest things that we have done to kind of offset these challenges, create our own community. A lot of the people in our cohort, they are directors, mental health people, professionals, and they kind of have veered on the path of doing their own organizational work, their own community work, and we come together collectively as a cohort to talk about the things we're going through, find funding for ourselves, where our leader finds funding. But what we do is we're creating our own spaces, we're creating our own orgs, we're creating our own community that we want to see, because we can't put that in the hands of people who I won't name drop, other organizations that are the pillars of reproductive justice, but they're still inflicting so much harm onto their Black workers and the Black community and marginalized communities that they want to uplift. I think that orgs and people in power who want to uplift and support reproductive justice, they need to have the people who they want to service at the forefront. Black, queer, and trans people need to be in director positions. They need to be in decision-making positions to ensure that the projects that are implemented, the funding that is implemented is going and funneling to the people that they need to be. I think resources and access to local people, like local grocery stores, local folks, I think are the best. I think that we try to outsource a lot of community funding, a lot of resources outwards, but I think that people in our community, it brings them revenue, it gives them jobs, and I think that's the best thing for any type of community servicing work. Wellness in my community work is the utmost importance. Working in a clinic, I think it's important to look at the totality of a person, not just key indicators of like health. Mind, body, spirituality, and so many other things are intertwined to people's totality of health. And I think that well-being is all-encompassing of so many different things. And I think that when we talk about healthcare, we just think of like the logistics of blood work, of weight, of so many other things, and we kind of leave out specifically mental health. So I think that for me, well-being is a slew of things that are really important to an individual person that makes them what they are, and they're prioritizing those things outside of just typical eating good, walking around, and doing typical things for their health. One of the biggest things that I've been doing to prioritize my health and well-being is saying no, calling off when I need to, using my time, using my vacation time, and not being burnt out at work. I think that in healthcare and in any job in general, we spend so much time in a day servicing other people that we forget ourselves. So I've been prioritizing myself, going to the gym, doing things to enrich myself. And when I don't have the capacity for something, whether that be work, my life with my children, my family members, I'm saying no. Absolutely. Absolutely not. Not going to do that today. I think that we should be doing daily check-ins, weekly check-ins with ourselves, and really making sure that what we're doing is in alignment. What we're doing also, I think, is important, but the most important thing is for you to be your best self to perform. So if you are feeling drained or not nourishing yourself, you're not able to show up to your community. I think also one of the biggest things is I have a person who knows me really well, like my close friends, and they'll tap into me and say, Victoria, you're not taking care of yourself. So I think that you are the focal point of yourself in your life, so you should be able to tap in. But having that community and those people who you know, they will realize that, hey, you need to take some time, you need to tap into yourself, is really important to you. If I can make one call of action for people to support reproductive justice, I would say the biggest one to me is crowdfunding. Whether it be for abortion care, whether it be for GoFundMes for people to get, top surgery, whatever surgery that they need. I think that we need to take alternative routes to support people, and the only way that a lot of people can do that is through funding. So even if it's $1, $5, $2, that goes a long way with getting people to where they need to be. Thank you for having me. I didn't break.